A little bit about us. The way most people know Coinstar is through our Redbox division. So we're now the #1 renter of DVDs, in the U.S. We've passed Blockbuster, we've passed Netflix, we've taken over #1 market share, and we're still growing. 38,000 kiosks nationwide. We just bought Blockbuster Express from NCR, so we just added another 11,000 kiosks on another system that somebody else is running for us that we've got to consolidate and report on. The face of the company, the founder, what we're named after is the coin sorting kiosks. So, cash, currency, revenue transactions, 4 different countries, 4 different currencies, FX, FAS 52, all those sorts of complexities that layers on, different ERP systems in different countries. So we had a lot of challenges. We've got 6 different internal, new ideas that we're incubating. So those are all growing at different paces with different contracts, different suppliers, different vendors, different revenue sharing terms. And we've got 2 investments where we've got equity stakes in companies with a path to control. So, we've got, other things that we're on the equity method where we've got to take, data uploads from them to consolidate. We've got to build that into our MD&A and our analysis and our forecasting. And you've got to communicate back and forth with the third party who's got their own systems, their own calendars. So a little bit of complexity through that. All up, we're going to do about $2.2 billion in revenue, $1.6 billion in market cap, 2,700 employees. 2,000 of those are field employees, so they're not in a headquarters office where they've got a desktop with a terminal. So they're trying to log in through VPNs or mobile devices and trying to get their data through a lot of different ways that all of them, my IT department tells me, are unsecured and risky. And so how do you share financial data through that type of an environment? 50,000, 60,000 kiosks. So when you think of how many locations I've got that I'm gathering data from, I've got 60,000 stores out there that I'm trying to gather data from. We're doing $2.2 billion of revenue, $1 at a time. So a lot of transactions. We've already got over 400 million transactions. That says transaction volume, that's me. It's over 400 million transactions already, through the end of August. So we're in Visa's top 5 of the number of transactions we run with Visa. So when you think of us, even though we're only a $2 billion company, when you look at the number of transactions that we've got, it's astronomical. So just a lot of big data that you've got to sort through, and you've got to find ways to do that quickly and efficiently. We acquired Redbox from McDonald's. So it came with its own culture, systems, processes, people. When we bought them, they were already the biggest, so they had the chip on their shoulder. I'm not changing anything. You guys change. We're the big one. We're the big kid on the block. And they're like, no, we're headquarters. And they're like, no, I don't care. We're bigger, we're better, we're faster. So, a lot of organizational challenges on how do you integrate this and how do you get to a fast close. We've got, like I said, 6 different ventures that are all growing organically. They're all sure that they're different, that they're unique, they're special. I need my own chart of accounts, I need my own system, I need my own CRM. My customers are different than your customers, my suppliers are different. So, when you have such diversity, it creates a lot of challenges within your organization, and one of the places that it manifests itself is in the close. We went out for an RFP for a new travel agency. Sounds simple. CEO says, hey, I need travel data. You give me all the hotel and all the airline spend that we've done in the last 2 years. He looks at me, I've got 4 different ERP systems, spread out over 4 different geographies. It takes me 3 days to give him the number, and even then, I'm not sure it's right. The queries are all different. I got different analysts running the queries on different systems. Do we really have the right data? Probably not. Hopefully directionally it's correct, and that wasn't an SEC disclosed number, so nobody had to certify it. But that creates a challenge on how do you close those books quickly, efficiently, cost-effectively, and reliably. How do you know you're giving people the right data if you can't even figure out your airfare spend, in less than 3 days? I've got to close the books in 3 days. Now we have numbers, pencils down in 3 days. Day 4 and day 5 are for analysis, and day 5 numbers are locked. That's the end of it, unless the auditors come up with something, which, knock on wood, they don't. So that was the challenge we were facing. So the first thing I said is, I need a better system. I've got to get into a single ERP system in order to close these books faster. this isn't something I can just throw more people at, because the challenges that we're facing aren't lack of manpower, it's a lack of access to data, it's a lack of reliability of the data. So we put together this and we said, okay, this is our value proposition. Now here's all the value that we're going to be able to provide to the business, and then here's the value that it's going to result in, as well as finance. Anytime you go to your CEO or your executive committee and ask for $20-some million to implement a new ERP system, the first thing they're going to say is, come on, this is just a finance toy. That's all you want, is some new toy for the finance department to play with. What's it going to do for the rest of the business? So you've got to come up with your value prop that says, okay, here's what we're doing for the rest of the business, and at the same time, here's the benefits it's going to provide for us. So then, once they finally approve it, the next thing they say is, okay, well, I better see all of those in your commitments for the next year, because you better deliver on that. So, we've committed to building a shared services framework. We've stripped finance out of each of the lines of business. We've stripped it out of the incubation groups, and we said, okay, we've got one finance department. We're going to do it once for the whole company, and we're going to be able to scale and grow as the business grows, and we're going to be able to lower our cost as a percent of revenue every single year because we were doing it once instead of building a new finance department for every new business that we build up. We said we can remove risk and cost structure. One of the scary things when you come in and you've got 4 ERP systems and 25 different homegrown apps that are all bolted onto those is you sit back and you talk to your IT teams and you say, okay, well, what kind of disaster recovery do we have for these things? And they kind of give you the shrug. They're like, we've got tape backups of data. I'm like, well, that's great, but if the data center goes down, how are we going to get this thing back up? Do we have a good protocol on how to get this system back up and operating again? I'm sure some guy who was here when we wrote it knows where that is, but that position's turned over 4 times in the last 6 years, and no, we don't know how to get our revenue systems back up quickly. We don't have disaster recovery where we're not going to have downtime in front of the customers if these systems fail. So getting to a common platform and common systems really helped us with disaster recovery. It helps your auditors, with the IT auditors, get through all of the stuff that turns up in your SOX reviews where they say, oh, you've got this risk, and you're like, well, how can I mitigate that? There's no real easy way to mitigate, disaster recovery. Or those are the types of things that comes in an audit committee project, and it takes a 2-year roadmap to fix it. And so you've got to deliver that sort of stuff. We've got complicated revenue sharing calculations, so everybody gets a piece of the dollar that we have, and so the studios get some, the retailers get some, the partners that we work with get some, and so we've got really complicated revenue sharing calculations that we were doing all in spreadsheets. So anytime you've got a huge piece of your P&L that's being run through spreadsheets, you've got huge risk. Your auditors are going to take time to check that every single time. There's not a lot of reliance they'll place on spreadsheets that they can just roll over and say, okay, I don't have to retest that. They're like, nope, it's a spreadsheet, it could have changed, so they've got to go back and retest that. So shortening my close cycle meant shortening my auditor's time. When you shorten your auditor's time, you've got to find ways to help speed them up. And getting stuff out of spreadsheets was one of the ways we could really help speed up the auditor's time. The other benefit is lower audit fees because they spend fewer hours, so that was the key to getting that done. We had to close we had to shorten our closing time, and then we also had to provide better analytics. So all those things ended up on my commitments, once we did this ERP system implementation. So the basic GL package, we put in a single GL package, in SAP that was going to put us all on a single instance of SAP. Single chart of accounts, single closing process, single instance of all the recons. We were able to standardize and centralize a lot of the work that we do by getting everybody into a single instance of SAP. Once we put everybody on the same chart of accounts, we were able to come up with a standard close list. We didn't even have closed lists when I started. People just kind of knew what to do when they did it, and they had a binder, and you kind of looked at the binder that you had from last quarter and make sure everything was there from this quarter. Now, the close process is exactly the same for all of our lines of business. What needs to get booked, and as part of the close is now standard because everybody's got the same system. There's no different subsystems, there's no different general ledgers, and so we've got a standard chart, a standard close list, which gives me a lot of confidence that the right stuff's getting done, and it's getting done in the right time and by the right people. The auditors love it. It's online, it's in a SharePoint site, the actual close list is, so they can see who it was completed by, who it was reviewed by, it's documented, it's got a timestamp, and so for them, they can just crank through something in an hour for a staff, that they used to have to go out and pull samples and actually go look at journal entries and do this stuff to make sure that it was getting done. So putting up the GL into a single instance has really helped us speed up the process and helps us do it better. So that's been a big key for us. The second thing we did is we moved all of our budgeting and planning and consolidation into a single module. So before, all 4 ERP systems that we had got consolidated in Excel. Once again, it's a mess, it takes time, the downloads, the running it, it took us a day just to consolidate. So when you looked at our close calendar, there was a day numbers were done, and then there was a full 24-hour period where it took just to do the consolidation. So you'd do all of that, and then somebody would find a late entry. In their reviews, they'd find a late entry, and they'd say, hey, I forgot to book this. Then you're cussing. You're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to book this? Do I book it topside? That's the only way I'm going to be able to get my final numbers done is to book it topside. Well, what if you book it topside? It never gets pushed down. Next quarter comes around, next year comes around, people forgot you booked this entry topside, they go to do their analytics. The old numbers don't tie to what was published because you booked the entry topside, and it's a mess. Now though you get a consolidation system, the auditors rely on it, the feeds are automated, they can use their ITGCs to make sure that the feeds are running properly. We can rely on it, we can rerun it fast. You actually book it at the source point, and then you can rerun the consolidation in an hour, and instead of 24 hours, you can turn it into 1 hour. So getting the consolidation package right was a huge accelerator for us in our close process. The other thing it did is this package put budgeting and forecasting into the same system. Obviously, if consolidation's in Excel, you never have your actuals and your budgets in the same system. So if you don't have them in the same system, how can you do analytics? How can you do reviews? Well, somebody who knows how to query the actuals is different than somebody who knows how to query the budget and the forecast. Those two guys have to get together. They have to meet. They have to make sure we've got apples to apples. And then you do the analysis after you get everybody to agree on whose number's right and whose number's wrong. First thing when you got a difference, somebody says, well, your number's wrong. No, not somebody's number's wrong. Okay, well, maybe we defined the queries different. Okay, let's get those sorted out. So getting them into a system where the data is consistent across all of that, the budgets, the forecasts, the actuals, it speeds things up a lot. You're able to do better reporting, do better analytics. If you guys have SOX, then you know that your number one control nowadays is your management reviews. When it started, it was all the detail stuff. 8 million detail controls. This is how we build every single number up, and this is my control. Well, as SOX has evolved, it's kind of gotten to the point that what do you really rely on to make sure your numbers are right? Well, at the end of the day, it's the budget to actual or the actual to forecast reviews that you do. It's that manager sitting down and looking at his or her numbers and saying, okay, I know what's going on, I know my trend, and I know that these numbers are right. So by putting this all into one system, we've really been able to step up our ability to give people data, to do those analytics, to do the controls that we're relying on the most better. Do them better, do them faster, and do them more reliably. So it's been a real big win for us to be able to get the business back engaged because we can give them better data, better reports, better formats, more timely. And so, we're not quite to the point where it's self-service, where they can run their own reports, but we've got the canned reports nailed that we can give back to the business managers so they can look at their results. So for us, our plans are to continue to put more modules into SAP. We kind of took baby steps because we said initially, if you make it too big, you'll never get done, and if you never get done, people will never put the right emphasis on it. So we've taken baby steps and done a couple of modules a year and said we're going to have hard deadlines, we're going to have firm commitments, and there's no excuse for not getting these things done. So we made sure to make the bites small enough that people could bite that off and get that done in that time frame. Because you've all heard the nightmare stories of the 6-year implementation from hell that never finished, that's always gone on. And so we've tried to break it into smaller pieces. What we're also trying to do is we're trying to train people across the whole business to say, okay, we've got one single instance of the truth. We've got one chart of accounts, we've got one system to pull data from, and we've got one definition on this is how you do a query for this defined term. So even though everybody wants to slice and dice their data differently, and they can, what we've done to speed things up, especially at corporate, is said, okay, we're going to define all of the key terms, and we're going to define how the query for that term gets done. Anytime you come talk to the executive committee this is how you're going to talk about it. So by getting it into a single system, with a single taxonomy, with single definitions, we've really been able to deliver on what our 5 commitments were around how do you speed up that close, and how do you speed up your processes, and how do you get buy-in across all of your lines of business. So that's what we've done in the 2.5 years that Tad and I have been there at Coinstar, and we're going to keep working on down that path. And now I've got a new framework on how to do that. So thank you, James.